It's that time of the year where many of us are actively looking for the spooky and the creepy, because Halloween is approaching in a few weeks, and I've been really diving in headfirst into the horror genre, because I don't normally read anything in the horror genre. I mean, I usually stick to, let's say, fantasy, slice of life, sci-fi, but I don't usually read the creepy and the freaky, which is really strange, because when you think about what I actually love to read, I think if anyone knows me, I love psychological, I love mystery, I love thriller, I love some creepy stuff, and it's weird that I don't normally dive into the horror genre, and so for the past few weeks I really have been taking an interest in diving into some creepy stuff, and I've read Sweet Home now, Shotgun Boy, started Bastard by the same author, and now Everything is Fine, which I'm going to be talking about in this video. It's been a lot of fun, really kind of breaking the norm, because like I said, I stick to fantasy, sci-fi, and all that, and just being able to read something different is definitely enjoyable, and I cannot recommend it enough. Like all the series I just mentioned, like Sweet Home, Shotgun Boy, Bastard, and now this, Everything is Fine, are definitely all worth a read if you're wanting something incredibly unique and different from maybe the norm that you probably are usually reading. But anyways, I want to talk about Everything is Fine. I want to theory craft on this series, because a few weeks back, I made a video talking about the series and my overall first impressions. And if you have not seen that video, I'll link it in the description, but most likely, most of you might have seen it, because it was the video I talked about that got an advertisement for by WEBTOON, which that made me so freaking happy. Just thank you so much, WEBTOON, for using my video as an advertisement. That was just insane, because it's like, you know, you got noticed, and it's just a good feeling when you see a series you're talking about just get noticed by the people that are publishing it. I'm just happy about that. So just thank you very much, WEBTOON, for noticing that video for my first impressions and using that as, like, you know, an advertisement. But hopefully a lot of people got in the series thanks to it. And on the off chance that you still don't know anything about, you know, Everything is Fine, you know, once again, link is in the description for the series and that video if you want to see the first impressions. Okay, let's dive in to what this video is about. And this video is going to be about me theory crafting about the potential future of Everything is Fine, and what we know so far from the story, from the current chapter that has released. So, as you can already see, this video will contain spoilers. So if you are not up to date with Everything is Fine, I really do recommend you to go down below and read it if you are interested, because it is a good series, and looks can definitely be deceiving. Because I want to say right now, if you were to take a first look at, let's say, Everything is Fine, and you just look at it, you'll think, oh, it's a cutesy, slice life, maybe romance type story. But that could not be further from the case of what Everything is Fine is about. It is a psychological mystery horror series. And if you are wanting something like that, then I cannot recommend this series enough to you. So just, once again, the look of cutesiness is meant to be misleading. But okay, with that out of the way, let's dive into it. So, as we know, the entire population in this world that we have seen is in a dystopian future. And this dystopian future is controlling everything that our characters do. For instance, our main two characters, Sam and Maggie, they are literally forced to follow the rules, follow the regulations. They cannot even speak their mind in their own home about how they feel, or they potentially might become red status. And red status, if you're up to date, is something that is not what you want. If you become red status, we don't really know the whole repercussions of what it is, but you can theory craft of what happens. One is that if you become red status, you literally lose all status in society, you literally become homeless, you lose everything. You become nothing at that point, and no one are even allowed to mention your name anymore. You are an outcast, which in of itself is a horrible situation, but there's a lot more going on, and probably more mystery that we don't even know what happens to the individual. One thing we do know, which has been shown slight glimpses here and there, is that if you become red status, some person that you potentially love, most likely your child, is thrown to the wolves, you know, so to speak. For instance, they're gone. It lets you know that every individual character is probably being held as hostage. For instance, they're being held against their will, not just for a dystopian future because they fear for their own lives, but they fear for a life that, you know, others that have been imprisoned or held hostage, and they have to do what this, you know, society says. So it's really messed up. It lets you know that the people are entirely under control of whatever these entities are. We don't know if it's actually people, we don't know if it's aliens, we don't know if it's monsters, we don't really know at the point of the current chapter, but there is some speculation that can be made. One thing that does need to be mentioned is what the latest chapter reveals, and that is Charlie and what is behind that cat mask. So, when you first begin the series, you don't know if actually the characters really are just cat-headed individuals, or if there actually is a human face behind it. But now, with the recent stuff we've gotten, especially with Charlie, to, the homeless kid that was in Chapter 3, you can kind of speculate that there is a human face behind the cat mask. The question is, what is this mask for? Well, we can assume that the mask is for surveillance. For instance, it's, making sure everybody's being watched, they're staying in line, and they don't say what they're not supposed to say. And on top of that, if there is something behind the mask, for instance, whatever was going on with Charlie's mask, it could be some form of biological entity. Because when you look at it, it looks like a brain. It does. However, if you go to the homeless kid, the homeless individual, it looks like it's grayed out. It looks like it's really decayed looking material, which might still be maybe brain matter or something that entity is. So I feel like my personal theory is that the mask is some form of biological creature, either alien, monster, or created by man itself, to be put on people's heads and monitor them, and if they do something wrong, either it devours them, or it causes it to where maybe, they lose themselves, maybe memories, devours their very emotions. We don't really know at this point, but we can definitely assume that the entity on their heads is definitely not something you could just take off. I feel like maybe it's fused to the very individual, which makes you now wonder about the situation with Charlie. And when you look at him in the latest chapter, his entire mouth section has been torn off and you could see the human face. And the only time we've actually seen this is from the homeless character that had the exact same situation. However, every other character, their mask is perfectly on, they never take it off, and they're able to eat like nothing is wrong. So, I wonder, if you become red status, if the mask's function literally ceases, and you have to literally tear into it to be able to eat. And if you don't, you will starve to death. That's what I assume, because it's like, why would they have to rip their mouthpiece off if, the mask is functioning? So it makes me assume that the mask is actually biological, and if you don't rip it off, you will actually die once you become red status. Which, that's another thing to talk about. Red status. What is it? What does it actually mean? Now, like I said, we already know that it means you become a social outcast. You're thrown to the wolves, and you lose someone precious to you. But how come Charlie is still alive? That's something I was wondering, because if Charlie is alive, it means that the people that become red status don't necessarily get killed, unless Charlie escapes somehow. But we don't really know. It makes me wonder, what does red status mean, and does it mean that, you've lost all privileges, and it means that, you can just be terminated at any point? We don't really know, but the red status is very vague, and it seems like individuals that do get it don't actually die. Maybe they're just meant to stay alive to suffer and think about their consequences, and this kind of leads me to believe that the couple that Sam and Maggie got rid of to be able to frame them for the police officer, Tom, will come back to get vengeance against Sam and Maggie later on, if Charlie's somehow alive, and that's the normal for red status individuals. So, revenge plot could actually happen, so that's going to be kind of freaky if it does. If there is one thing that does need mentioning, it's the fact that there is no children that we have seen in Everything is Fine. Yeah, we've had our characters mention that they're a mom, they're a dad, Charlie lost probably, a child as well, but we don't actually see any children in the actual active story in this type of situation, which makes me believe that this society deems children unnecessary, and that most likely there is a ban on procreation, or there is just a limit to it, whatever it may be. I feel like if you probably, take upon procreating, they might cause you to be in this type of situation where the helmets are put on your head. Maybe that's what the leading cause is. Maybe it's some form of population control as to why this is happening to all all these characters in this society. It is something to think about, especially by just the interactions of Sam and Maggie throughout this series' run. We don't really know, but I think that that's what makes the series so engaging and why I've been having such a good time actually reading it. And so yeah, like I said, I cannot express it enough. If you're really wanting something unique, something creepy, something horror-like, give Everything Is Fine an actual read. It is worth it. It's a very quick read. You could probably catch up in about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on how fast of a reader you are, and if you reread the chapter multiple times. There's great things about it, and I feel like this series is going to become very big in the future. I feel like there's so much potential that this might become a classic amongst, let's say, Sweet Home and Shotgun Boy, because people love those series, and I cannot believe it took me so long to read those series. I feel like Everything Is Fine is going to be held in the same limelight as, you know, those two series. But I guess I'm going to leave it at that. Once again, if you're interested in this series, link is in the description. You can check it out. It does help me out a lot when you click that link as well. But please be safe. Stay healthy, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. And have a really good rest of the day and weekend, whatever it may be when you watch this video. I wish you all the best. I love you guys. Be safe. Stay healthy. Chibi out.